Australian retirees may soon find themselves paying more tax on their super.
So this is a new tax, a revenue grab on the dead, pure and simple.
But many of us may be unaware of Australia's hidden inheritance tax.
But this is exactly what we can expect from Labor governments. More and more spending, plus down the track, more and more taxing of the most productive people in the society.
Well, we missed out last time. We couldn't get that up, so let's try another angle and stick it to them this time on inheritance tax. And look, they claim that Deloitte's come up with a paper, but that's been talked about at Canberra for 18 months. So inheritance tax sort of came about during the war, in the 40s, early 40s, and then sort of ceased at 1979. So what that means, if you go back and cast it back to the calculations how inheritance tax applied, is that it was a rough estimate on upon death distribution of 3% of the asset value. Now, there's no talk about whether it's going to be 3% or any percent's been noted, but what we've got to be mindful of is that those prices, when that came to an end in 1979, house prices now are 10 to 15, in some cases 20 times the value. Certainly 10, depending on postcode you're in. So how does that work? And then if that inheritance tax used to apply to real estate, but not limited to other assets. So how does that work if someone passes on, well, not just the home, investment property, cars and artwork? Were limitations there? So all that needs to be, and then you've got, it's how, again, there's reasons why they shut it down. Now, if they're going to reintroduce that, because there's a big shift and transformation of wealth, more so than in the history of the world, in the next 12 months to 15 years, significant. So it's another way it's a bit like what they did with the capital gains tax and GST. Capital gains tax has been a big win post-85. And so this is akin more, this unrealised gains under superannuation was just stupid, just irresponsible, not thought through. And what's interesting, no one's given a reason why. No apology, frightened the hell out of 81,000 people, and then, they've just run away. Now they've come back with something else. And so I don't know whether that will actually get up and what does it look like again? Is it limited to what assets? Home, investment property, gold, shares, okay, well, total assets. The only thing it might not apply to, which it didn't apply to chattels. And people say, well, what does that mean? I said, well, if you've got $100,000 worth of furniture, the write-down and fire sale value, much as we don't like to think about it, is probably worth $5,000. But everything else is taxable. So, and then the policing of this, who polices this and who does the valuation at the end to work out what that was valued at? So just not thought through, reckless and stupid. Again, someone in there or some parties have been there on the red wine on the whiteboard and come up with this, and let's just see how it flies. It's more of a death tax. So that happens, then there's also, there's a capital gains tax, and there's different treatments for pension phase and also for accumulation phase. And that's treated then to the beneficiaries inside this, because the superannuation is actually an insurance contract under the SIS Act. So that is passed through depending on what stage, what phase that's in, whether it's an accumulation or in pension phase. And so there's always a capital gains tax that's applicable to that, but applicable to the member upon death to the beneficiary. So that's been in place for some time, and everyone accepts that. There's reasons for that though, because the notion of, well, how that was devised is that, well, if you've had tax benefits along the way and tax concessions, and the ATO's given those concessions, there's got to be a collection on the way out because there's been some of those monies. So it's got to do with some untaxed and taxed components inside the super. So basically, if the tax office hasn't had any collection on that certain amount of money, upon death, it collects that money, only with a death certificate. Okay, so that to me is reasonable and fair. An inheritance tax was passing on a tax liability. But so inheritance tax is to be the average of between, to give you some idea, $7,000 to $8,000 in 1945. In the end, it went to about $21,979. The inheritance tax on average, if you take an average suburban individual, Melbourne, Sydney, could be $80,000. Gets picked up, and so because it's at the asset value. So if you arrive at, $1 million home is 30%, that's $30,000, just the home. So it's 45 grand a $1.5 million home. But what else is there? Cash, shares, but so on someone with $1 million home, it could be quite easily $75,000 of. If you base that same sort of methodology back in up to 1979, it come to an end. So all I'm saying is, if they hopefully they've learned by their mistakes, how does it look like? If they're going to take it to the public and test it, what's it look like? They're going to try to sell something. Just this is the problem we've got. The country's broke, the state's broke, all of them. With South Australia, probably the only one that'll be solvent. Explain what you're trying to propose. And disclose it and declare it like we would as practitioners, bankers, lawyers and accountants have to disclose to get a fee of you. I've got to explain to what my scope is. For $10,000, I've got to explain what the hell I'm doing for that $10,000. Well, they're talking about raking in billions of dollars and not explaining to the individual why and how the mechanics works. That was my argument with unrealised gains. It's the same here. So again, I think it's too loose, and right now there's other ways to cut this, I think, and it just hasn't been thought through. It just seems to be, let's reintroduce. Irresponsible. Look, I look at this now, and coming back from America, it was quite interesting. They have more innovation and more priority on the spend from a local county or state than what we do, because no one seems to ask the government or propose, you've just come up with this innovation for this road toll and tunnel. Can you explain how you've arrived at that? As an urban planner, I was very fortunate enough when I was at Lend-Lease. Some of the smartest people I've ever met in my life, some of them is onerous decision makers, onerous jobs that I came across were men in the mid-70s, late 70s, and I was curious to say, who's that guy in the room? Well, he designed Melbourne pretty much the last 20, 30 years. You can thank him for designing Melbourne. Okay, wow. And you sit with them, they'd be in a brown cardigan, they'd be talking about it. So why is that important? Well, sunlight and high rise over the river has to be limited on that side to protect the ecosystem of the Yarra. Things like that. I go, what? Hang on. Really? He said, that's what I've got to carve out there, so the shadowing diagram at 9, 12 and 3 o'clock. And this fascinates me. Their brains would be able to design cities. And so the public don't see that. And I used to see the rationale and the why some people be, abusing governments because they've bought the height limit of their property from 25 stories down, they can only build 6. So I actually understand that side of it. But there seems to be no why we're building multi-billion-dollar rail loops from Cheltenham to Box Hill. Why is that being spent? Is there a better use of that money? I mean, how many people are screaming out for the demand of this billion-dollar project that's going to truncate time and cost, and who benefits? Let's just have a look at maybe the spend. Is it necessary? There doesn't seem to be any of that. No question going on. Well, why are we doing that? They come out and say, we've just awarded such and such builder to do that. We're very excited about it, and then who's going to pay? We're just dictating to you who's going to pay. Builders, it's going to come out of landowners and developers and so forth. And toll roads. I go, well, hang on. Well, we don't even know whether we want it. We wouldn't be out of line to even ask for some of the ideas on a beer coaster. Just something. If you're in a dark room, just a candle, some light. You know, and I think there's none of that. That's all absent. It's just all of a sudden we hear about it. It's all been announced. Projects been awarded to who? Who knows what's gone on there and why and who's involved. And it's going to cost this, and we believe how it's going to be funded. No need to worry. No need to worry. We've got it covered. It's you, the taxpayer, and developers, and anyone's got surplus cash. That's how we're going to fund it. It's so fanciful and so ridiculous, the thinking of some of these plans. And I've had a construction company for a long time. It's not a hobby. It's been a business. You need to put a justification around the case. I can't help but think. I used to hate thinking that people get into politics for the pension. Now, most of them are there for that. They are not intelligent, and they've had no contributions. Spend, spend, spend. Let's come up with some idea. Let's show up, know our lines, and come up with a great idea, and let's try and clock as much time as we possibly can to be eligible for that government pension. That's that's going on, and no one seems to be able to confront them, all of them, and that includes our Prime Minister. The thing is that you've got to be competitive, to the world. I mean, look, you're trying to keep the money here. So the innovation is almost non-existent, and you're trying to keep capital into this country, and there's not money pouring into the country like it was 10, 15 years ago. They've picked up their ball and gone somewhere else because the SIV visa, import visa, investment visas were badly managed. That money now has gone back to Singapore, in Canada, Vietnam, other areas of the world, Spain, Portugal, and Japan. And people say all the time, well, what's the solution? I said, well, there's a simple solution. There's a solution for everything. If I was in charge, I'd simply say, look, who's the smartest 12 people we've got on planet Earth? Not just Australia, planet Earth. And let's work out a budget, and let's work out, that's a good investment, not 34 billion. Let's work out how much it's going to cost. It's going to cost $50 million of taxpayers' money to write a solution for the next 50 years of this country. And let's work out what should be done, what can we do now in baby steps, how long it's going to take us to get there, and what are the cost benefit, and what can we do. Now, if you sell that, and the people go, well, I'm with that, I'd support that, and you see that you're going to cut taxes, you're going to cut spending, make it a priority. We're not going to spend 34 billion on roads. We don't need to. We need to spend a third of that. And then what you've got is you get an agreement from the public. This is what we've done. This is the war chest. We've saved this much. We're not going to do stupid initiatives. We're just not going to start those now. Then you've got an agreement from the public, and that becomes your campaign. But explain it. And if you explain it and declare it, people will buy into it. Well, we need that. The country will be better. My kids will have a better place. Their kids will have a better place. But right now, did you get the news? We're $34 billion. We're going to start that. Let's get going. Crack the champagne there. We've all got it all organised there, and everyone's going to pay. And by the time not even by the time it's completed, she'll be well gone. Our state premier.
In other words, you're paying more because the government's spending more. It's as simple as that.